Greetings, my name is Kimberly Stewart-Lucas, and welcome to the first episode of the Reclamation Project Exhibit podcast. It's sure a little while we're here today, Donna. So, the Reclamation Project is a visual celebration of Black women's beauty, spirituality, sensuality, and sexuality, and the perceived self-image and worth as women. The project is inspired by classic images from Players magazine, Players Pictorial, Old Brother, and Jet magazine's annual nude calendars from the 70s. The Reclamation Project is a love letter to Black women, young and old. Reclamation is about Black women releasing feelings of shame, guilt, and embarrassment tied to their bodies and reclaiming and asserting their sexuality, their sensuality, and their womanhood. It's about understanding how each of these elements are intricately intertwined with their spirituality. As women, daughters, wives, sisters, aunts, and mothers, Black women are constantly reclaiming and redefining the very definition of who they are, peeling off all the labels that no longer serve them. The Reclamation Project is about being at peace with and loving who you are, as you are, and where you are. Mm-hmm. And I also would like to say thank you to Creative Suites at the Plug ATL for powering this episode and this podcast going forward. So we're producing these episodes because we are preparing for the next exhibit of the Reclamation Project. Mm-hmm. And the theme for this one is Self-Define the Feminine Divine. Mm-hmm. Be 34 Black women who are creating self-portraits of themselves in different mediums. And that opening exhibit will be Saturday, November 16th, 2024. At Tri-Cities Tattoo Company in East Point, Georgia. And there'll be more information in the caption of this post. So before we get started into the origin of the art exhibit and why it even happened, which debuted in 2018, I want to talk about the impetus of the exhibit. And to talk about that with me today, I am joined by my big sister, Donna Schiele.
Okay. Do it like Oprah.
Donna Schiele.
Hi.
Thank you for being with me today.
Of course.
So I wanted you to be a part of the first episode because I wanted to lay out kind of the foundation of the exhibit.
Right.
And the foundation lies with our daddy.
That's right.
And his collection. And we have a few issues here of Players calendar. This is Pam Grier and 76 calendar, and even Jet magazine did a nude calendar from 75. I have the very first issue of Players magazine here.
Wow.
From November of 1973.
That's in plastic.
It's in plastic.
The very first issue.
The very first issue.
That's huge.
And for those that don't know, Players magazine was like the Black man's Playboy.
Yes.
That's Jane Kennedy.
Jane Kennedy, honey.
She was on several covers.
Yes.
But wanted to just talk about our experience with these magazines because we have very distinct, different experiences.
Yes.
And what came out of those experiences and then what eventually led to the first exhibit in 2018. So because you were older than I.
Yes.
Don't look it. You look younger than me. As you get older, you look younger. I don't know what that's about. But anyway.
Okay. Well, thank you.
But because of the age difference,
yes,
you saw these things first.
Yes.
So I want to start off with your experience and anything else that you want to share as far as like even what led up to your first time seeing these images.
Oh, okay. Because I am older than you, that means I'm old. So I can't I don't remember the first time I saw these magazines. It's been a long time. I do have memories of them in our home in Clifton Park. So you were a baby. We're 6 years apart. And so I remember almost every house we had a wet bar. Like,
explain what that is, please.
Our parents, a wet bar. That's a bar with a sink. So it means you are you have a a bar like you would have in a establishment.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so our parents were entertainers. I mean, they loved to entertain. I remember having huge Christmas parties and things. I'd be upstairs and they'd be downstairs just having a ball. Mm-hmm. And so in the bar area in Clifton Park, there was some little caveats, some little corners in there. Mm-hmm. And so Daddy had some magazines. Like, he never had them like out in the open, but they weren't hard to find either, right? So he had some in the bar, behind the bar, in like one of the little shelves.
Like little slots, little shelves.
Little slots, little shelves. So I would see him. Now, I knew I'm thinking around 6 or 7, that I shouldn't see this. Mm-hmm. I knew that. Mm-hmm. But I would kind of open and look through, and the first of all, these magazines aren't all just nude.
No, they're lifestyle. They're lifestyle magazines.
They're regular magazines.
They're about politics.
Right.
They're about music. They're about comedy. They're book excerpt.
Oh yeah,
all that. Like it's a lifestyle magazine.
They were like a Ebony, right? Mm-hmm. They were like a Ebony, which. And Kim, you can talk about this too. I mean, we grew up around magazines. Our grandfather had Ebony, Jet, like they were Essence. They were around us all the time. So here was another magazine. But as you flip through, you're like, okay, this is a regular magazine. I mean, look at this. Is about the military. I mean, it's just basic things. But then you'll come across a bush, and you'll be like, oh. I don't think I'm supposed to be seeing this one right here. So I knew it was a little taboo. Like, I'm not supposed to see this, but I'm seeing it.
But I have access to it.
So whatever. Now, how did it make me feel? I don't really know. I wasn't like, ooh, I want to be like that, or ooh, I like this, or like it gave me a feeling like, ooh, I like what she looks like, or anything. I didn't have those feelings. But I was still intrigued because I knew it was something that perhaps I shouldn't see. So my story that I do remember is my neighbor, Michelle, who lived next door to us. We were the only Black family in our cul-de-sac in upstate New York. And everybody loved, I mean, it was just such a lovely place. Everybody was so loving and caring, and everybody cared about each other in that cul-de-sac. So anyway, Michelle, I would play with Michael and Michelle. Michael was my age. Michelle was a year younger. So we would all play. So one day Michelle came over and we were down in the basement and we were just playing around, and I said, ooh, I want to show you something.
You want to show, it was like showing off.
Yeah,
right?
like, ooh, I want to show you. Look at I know it's kind of not, I shouldn't show you, but let me show you something.
Let me show you something.
Let me show you something. So, I don't remember, but I was flipping through the magazines. I was like, ooh, look at that, look at this. And she was like, ooh, and it was probably her first time ever this little white girl saw a Black woman naked. Like, she was just like, okay, she didn't say anything. But clearly it made a mark, because a little later we get a phone call, and it's Michelle's mother, and she's talking to Mommy. I don't know the conversation, but what I do know is after talking to Mommy later and everything, that obviously Michelle went home and decided to do some of the poses she saw in the magazine on our couch downstairs. She didn't tell anybody. She just was on that. Now,
so she wasn't like, come look at me. She just was doing them.
She was just doing them.
Her mom found her doing it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So I can only imagine what poses she must have been doing for her mom to be like, what are you doing?
Phone call.
Right. Because she couldn't have just been like, you know what I mean? She had to have been doing some things that were poses. Like, whoa. So who knows what that was, but it was enough for her mother to say, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And where'd you get that from?
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, like she didn't think it was a big deal. She was like, oh, Donna showed me some magazines and the ladies were doing this in the magazines. And she was like, okay. So she calls my mom and, she's like, I don't know. Michelle said Donna saw some magazines and showed Michelle. I'm sure she didn't mean any, harm. So, of course, my mom was livid. Our mom. She
always says that. She'll always say, in my presence, my mom, as if it's not our mom, because we have the same mom and dad. But go ahead.
We do have the same mom and dad. I always say, my mom. Anyway, our mom was livid. And so she tells Daddy. And she was like, I told you to put those up. And now it's embarrassing. Now I got to tell the neighbor, and so our dad.
Listen, here's the thing. They're your parents for 6 years before I came along.
I know, but still,
but we're not.
I'm used to telling this story outside of you, so that's why. So Daddy proceeds to, give me a lecture about don't go in his things, da-da-da. And then he lays me over his lap like a spanking from Little Rascals. Like, I get a spanking. And he's never spanked me before. Like,
that was the first time that he
Yes. I've never gotten in trouble. Not like that. With Daddy?
Yeah. No. I mean, Daddy never did that, but that was the first time that happened. Wow. Over the magazine.
Over the magazine.
And his embarrassment.
Because think about it, he probably was in his, early 30s, like, late 20s or something. So he was embarrassed. And so, but I had to learn my lesson for not going in them, right? So now I really know they're taboo. Like, now I know,
I got a spanking because
this
of
is forbidden.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm really going to look at these now.
Yeah, now you speak your interest because
I gotta whoop it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I just remember being that my mom was like, he's the one who should have got the spanking. I was so mad at him, blah, blah, blah. But at the time, I didn't know any of that, right? Yeah. So I just knew I disappointed Daddy by looking at his magazines and showing them to my friend.
Yeah.
So I don't recall being mad at the magazines or mad at Daddy about it. What the memory I have is that I'm not supposed to look at it and I can't show anybody else. Like, those are Daddy's magazines. But he had them still. It didn't stop him. I mean, he still had them everywhere. And then he had the file cabinet. I don't know if you remember the file cabinet.
Oh, that's part of my story.
Okay, so he had the file cabinet. He had them. He still had them. And so every now and then, it wasn't all the time, I would just look at them and see, what's going on in there. I didn't sit and read them or try to steal them or anything like that. But I don't have any memory of, wow, I want to do that when I grow up or, any attraction to women because of it or anything like that.
Did it make you feel a certain way about how you look at your body? Did you make a connection of, okay, these are Black women.
Yeah.
I'm a young girl who will grow up to be a Black woman.
Right.
Did they make you feel like, because again, I'll get into my part of it, the experience, but did you ever feel a connection to the images of what could be?
Right. I felt like this is what I'm going to be looking like when I grow up. Like, this is what I have to look forward to one day. But I knew it would happen one day. I just wasn't rushing it or like, oh, I wish I could do it now. Because, I was very skinny. I didn't develop till way, way later. But yeah, so I didn't have any hangups about it. If I try to think back, okay, I wonder what it really did to my psyche as a young girl. I think I was body conscious because I was so thin and didn't have the developed breast and the, those things until later. So, I always kind of felt a little self-conscious about it. But, and I think in the back of my mind, it's like, okay, this is what gets people's attention. But here's the thing. The women in these magazines are all shapes and sizes. Yes. So it wasn't like a certain type of woman was like, oh, you have to have
That's
big
more
breasts.
Preferred. Yes.
Right. Or you have to have this. Because all the women's breasts and different things were different sizes in the magazine. So it was just like, oh, okay. But yeah, it really didn't. I didn't feel as though it damaged me too bad or anything. And
you think about, you just even listening to you again, because I've heard the story before, but every time you share it, I think about different things about, who these magazines were intended for, right? The tagline is for he who is. So it was very clear that it was for men. For Black men, but also for Black men who were about the world.
Yes.
Right? That were interested in politics.
Accomplished.
That were, or striving to be accomplished, right? It was like the lifestyle magazine of the man you wanted to be.
Yes.
And these are the women that you might attract because of who you might become, right?
Right.
But also, and there's, of course, people that will say that this is, some people classify this as pornography. I know that, or erotica. And there are different
Right.
definitions, and there are some actual definitions of this. And it may, but I guess I'll transition into my experience about it. You know, I think because of like, they weren't available and accessible like that with me, right?
Okay.
My introduction to the magazines, or getting to the magazines, was because of the file cabinets and being the precocious child that I was, picking locks. So here's my thing. At some point, I must have known they were in there, right? But
or something was
in there
because it's locked.
Because it's locked,
right? It's like, why is
and
this
there
locked?
it was a 3 or 4 drawer column, and I'm gonna find out what's in that file cabinet.
Right.
So I would pick the lock, and to see that he would have these categorized by the year in binders and magazine holders.
Yep.
Like a stamp collection or like a coin collection. It gave value to it. It showed me that these are valuable,
right,
and they're important to him, right. So you took care of it. Again, I knew too. I wasn't probably supposed to. They were locked,
right.
So it wasn't. And Daddy, I'm just also say this. Daddy did not have, like you said, have these out and available.
No.
He wasn't, they were on the coffee table with the ebonies and the essence and the jets,
no,
right?
they were not.
And when I looked at the images, to me, I just saw beautiful Black women, like you said, in different body types.
Yeah.
But what stuck and resonated with me was, because I'm hairy, were the women that had hair on their legs and their arms and their pubic hair. It was like, oh, this is acceptable. Like, I don't have to, because we also saw in just advertisements,
right,
Nair and Neat. And, so in the TV land, or even in magazines, like Essence and Ebony, right? You were always seeing products to remove your hair.
Right.
But here's a magazine that I think is about, beautiful women,
right,
with hair. So it informed me that it's okay to be hairy. And that's a whole journey in my life about just even accepting that, that physical attribute. But it gave me like license to be like, oh, wow, this is okay. Because even these grown women kept their hair on their legs, and they took pictures for this publication to be sold. Right. That was just that stuck for me. And that to me,
and they
made
were
me feel
models.
They were models. And that actually, so when it comes to like how these magazines made me feel about my body, they actually were kind of affirming because of that. There was something that I was ashamed of, and then saw these grown women accepting it and it being present. So yeah, it was always about celebrating beauty to me. Yeah. And then when Daddy, as life moved on and life went on, I saw the condition and the way in which he was taking care of the magazines was different. And I think that was connected to the way he was feeling about his life, right? Because a catalog or a collection that you would lock up in a file cabinet then became in your drawers, which is not a bad place, but then it became out of the binders into storage boxes, the banker's boxes, in your closet. And so this is years later, as I'm getting older, and I'm noticing they went from locked file cabinets to now stacking on top of each other in banker's boxes in your closet. And I'm like, this is not good. And I knew they were of value, and not even just of value, but they were important to him.
They were important to him, yeah.
But the way he was taking care of them and other things had changed, right? And we know that happens sometimes in our lives. Sometimes we can see how we care for things is in direct connection to how we care for ourselves, right? Yeah. And so I think that's when I asked him, I said, Daddy, can I take some of these off your hands? Because I don't think I had a full conversation of I'm noticing that you're taking care of them different. Yeah. And that came later on, my realization of that. But I just noticed that maybe this is not the best place for them to be. I didn't take all of them, but I took about a good maybe 15 or 20 magazines to the house. Okay. I'm an adult at this time. Yes. I think, I'm trying to think, this was before Solomon, before we had children. But let's just say it was around when the children were small. So I knew bringing them into my house, I also had to put them somewhere where it's not accessible, right? But I would always look at the magazines, and it's like, being an event planner, I'm always looking for things to celebrate and things to do an event, about. And I'm trying to think just chronologically, so in 20, 2008,
Mm-hmm.
I think, was when Melissa Thomas and Jamila Ma'at Nation, rest in peace, and our friend Linda Costa, who was a light photographer, came together at our house, and we did pictures.
Mm-hmm.
So we had images. We had the magazines around because we were looking through them as like inspiration for poses.
Yeah.
We wanted to do something with the magazines, right? And we took beautiful pictures. And so the light photography that Linda was doing at the time, she had an old school camera that she would actually keep the shutter open. I don't know all the lingo, the correct terminology, but we would basically do photographs in the dark. And she would take light sources like Christmas tree lights or flashlights or any kind of light source. And she would open the shutter to the camera, and we would be in the dark, and we would just kind of hold a pose. And she would take the light and outline us or put the light on us.
Yeah.
And that's what the essence of photography is. It's light on, a subject. Right. And they just became the most beautiful pictures that I always, going forward with the exhibits, have one of those images at the show called The Reclamation.
Yeah.
But at that time, I was working for, I'm trying to think, it was either the school or the church, right?
Okay.
So it felt like a conflict of interest. It's like, how can I do an event? No one told me I couldn't.
Right.
But I just felt inside there was a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
To do a show that celebrated, the women in the magazines and just sexuality, working for a school, working for a church,
Yeah.
And we actually had an attempt, I think maybe even in the early 2000s, to do an exhibit at this club that's no longer exists, called Club Noir. It was in Peter Street.
Okay.
And we went as far as paying a deposit, lost the deposit because they ended up shutting down. It was it was a crazy thing. Like Melissa probably remembers some of the story too, but it was an unfortunate situation. I don't think I was fully ready.
Yeah.
But then I also lost $500.
Dang.
But it wasn't the right time.
It wasn't time.
It wasn't the right time. So because of that, I always had a wish list of the artists that I wanted to be involved. And when I left the school in 2017 to really pursue Absolutely Divine Events, it was like, I want the show. I want this exhibit to be like one of the first big events that I do, because now I felt the freedom to be able to do it.
Right.
And so December of 2017 is when I started inviting artists. Now, prior to that, I'm going to go back. Fabian Williams, an amazing visual artist in the city and just in the country, really, had scanned a lot of images from the magazines. So I had the images on a disc at the time, but they were available to be online. Yeah, he actually put them on like holding pages of his old website.
Okay.
So they were accessible online. And so, I just, at that time in my life, being a mother of, I think, 2 at the time, right? And coming into a place where I really wanted to celebrate who I had become or was becoming, it just seemed like the right time to do a celebration about these magazines. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Because, as mothers, and you can share your experience as well, but you get to sometimes a place where you kind of, I won't say you lose yourself. Actually, you can feel like you lose yourself. Yeah. And your body may change. And there's never going back to normal. There's a new normal that's created internally and externally in how you look. Yep. And so you're having to really fall in love with yourself again. Yes. Right? Yeah. Like, can you speak to your experience as a mom and
that's a whole thing.
That's another episode.
That's a whole episode. Yeah. Of course. Because I had these self-esteem issues in terms of my body, because I don't know if it had anything to do with magazines, and maybe a little part of that too, who knows, but because I wasn't developing as like some of the other girls, or, I didn't have, and I felt like that's what was getting attention. And that's what would be brought to my attention, or you don't have this, you don't have that, or, I remember a comment was made, your butt, comparing my butt to somebody else's butt, why is your butt as big as her? Like, it's just weird things that were said. So it made me feel like, dang, I'm not looking, a certain way.
I'm supposed to.
Yeah, being the president of the itty bitty titty committee.
Which, here's the thing, there's pride in that, in having smaller breasts.
Yeah.
But I think when people say stuff like that, that's not a compliment either.
It isn't. Back then, of course, now I'm sure the people who said those comments who will know who they are when they hear this. But they wouldn't say it now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, it's the times you just would say things out of your mouth, and it was just ridiculous. You shouldn't talk like
There
that
was
to
no
people.
political correctness.
Like, none when we were growing up in the 70s, 80s. So yeah, I had those issues. Okay, so then I become a mom.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, your body changes a little bit. But for me, it was kind of good because now I'm starting to have, shapes because I'm not happy about it. And the older I get, the more that is becoming. So, that's always a good thing. But yeah, your body does change. And I love how you said you have to learn how to fall in love with yourself again, because you're not your old you, and I guess I was never, this is a sad statement to say, I never was really in love with myself like I should have been as a teenager growing up. And I think I'm just learning how to do that now. I thought that love had to come from external, right? I didn't know, I didn't know that, hey, it needs to come from inside first. So I feel like it was kind of taught to us with grandma and everything and they didn't. They just told us what they knew.
It's not just them. It's society.
Society,
that teaches that you have to, it comes from the outside and not the inside. Well, now that we know, that is the exact opposite. Because the external out here will change on a dime.
Honey.
People, circumstances, your socioeconomic, all that will change.
It does.
But you better have for you a level of love that changes as well. But it can't be on the whim of someone else.
It has to be unconditional.
Or that you are only hearing it. It's nice. Here's the thing. Words of affirmation is my love language, right?
Love it.
But whenever we talk about those love languages, I always want to flip it about your internal, your self-love.
Are you speaking it to
yourself?
Are
you giving yourself words of affirmation? Are you giving yourself quality time?
Right.
Physical touch, acts of service.
Gifts,
right? We always talk about, and it's a powerful concept and powerful, theory and all of that about how to communicate with friends and your children and your partner and your spouse. But I think it needs to be primarily looked at about how you do those things for yourself.
That's right.
And that informs you of how, and sets the standard of how other people will do it.
Right.
Like, okay, that's not part of my words of affirmation. I don't want to hear that.
Right. I don't like that.
So.
Yeah, I think, but that's a good statement about learning how to love yourself again, or for the first time if you've never done it. And so, I think that all falls in line of the title of the whole project. Yeah,
the Reclamation Project. And for this next exhibit, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but it's self-defined. I think I did. Self-defined, the feminine divine. This will be self-portraits, which is a very vulnerable place to be.
It is, yeah.
The artists are not, nudity is not required.
Right.
In their piece. It's not, it's welcome as well.
It's welcome.
Because we think about, what the original images are.
Right.
But where people are in their life right now and having to do self-portraits is a very vulnerable thing to be in, right? But it's also very affirming and very loving, because I think, and I'll be in the exhibit and you'll be in the exhibit.
I am one of the artists.
This will be my first time producing work and to be displayed. But it's a raw space to be in, to look at maybe where, like you said, what our older bodies used to look like.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing kind of like where I was and where I am now in my piece, right?
That's right,
but that's what these magazines have opened up the conversation in me, and then to also ask other women in particular. And the show wasn't always, I won't get, the next episode will be about that first exhibit, but it's also extending the question to you all, like how are you feeling about yourself right now? Really, that's what this exhibit is.
Yeah.
How do you want to display where you are with your sexuality, your sensuality, and your spirituality, which are not on different ends of the spectrum. To me, they're all intertwined together. Like people like to put sex over here. And I'm going to be clear. I'm going to read this statement too, because of what reclamation is not.
Okay, what it's not.
Reclamation is not about sex. Reclamation is not about allowing the perception of others to define Black women and their beauty. Reclamation is not about quantifying Black women's value and worth. Reclamation is not about stigmatizing Black women's choices, and reclamation is not about judging sexual provocation.
Mm-hmm.
So it is really just seeing where you are, like I said, right where you are in this part of your life,
Mm-hmm.
and celebrating that. Yes, there are places that we probably want to aspire to as far as losing weight or doing this and
Yeah.
and that's fine. I have the goals. I have goals.
Right.
But it's also about loving every step of the journey.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we want to be in this place, but you better love where you are right now.
Mm.
Because you also have not always been here.
That's right.
There was a journey to get here, and
Yeah.
you have to honor and acknowledge that too.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
that's
good.
You know, to me, what this is about is, and also I sometimes look at these images. I want to bring them and have them in front of us today, and I always look through them and I think about these women, where they are, if they're still with us.
They're
they're still with us now because, Pam Grier, we know she is still with us, and I've got the original poster, on the Chase Lounge with the wine.
Yes, Pam.
But
Grier.
these were women that made decisions at the time to do these images, and I think about how they felt. One, when they were in the midst of the photo shoot, but then how they felt when they saw their bodies and they saw themselves in the publication, right?
They look that's another thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
They look so confident and proud. Not all of them are sensual pictures. It's like one lady's sewing, but she says she's nude, right?
This woman's, she's cooking.
She's about to have
a cocktail?
She's about to have a cocktail. This woman's got a tape measure around her neck and some fabric in her lap and just breasts out. Like she's just at a sewing machine.
And that could be some of us at home.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We're doing
just relaxing.
But it's also just being in your body and comfortable about what you're doing, and whatever that is, whatever your hobbies are, but you're still feeling confident and comfortable in your body.
Right. And I think that is what stood out, I think, too. And I don't know what the little girl did at home, but I just feel like what she saw possibly was the confidence. Because to go home and to do the pose, like maybe she saw some confidence. I don't know. That's just me being in her. She's not here. But as I look back and think about it, like what would make her, do that? And, but yeah, I know that was totally, as an adult and a parent now, I would be mortified. But, times are different.
But that's also, but think about that. I think about the girls, my girls. And I know Sarah wants to be at this exhibit. We haven't had them at the previous shows. And they're aware of what this exhibit is.
Right.
They've been in the shop and have seen the work from previous shows.
Right. They just haven't been to the show.
They just haven't been to the opening. So it's not like they're in a very artistic, creative family. So they see all the things that we do with exhibits. But how this, again, like kind of putting myself in the shoes of mommy at the time, right? Because in even one of the exhibits, we had a conversation, kind of an intergenerational conversation about what these magazines meant to the women, the wives, and the like then. To have your husband have a collection like this and what that meant. If it meant anything to you, you know, was it something that you just were like, okay, that's his thing, or you were, bothered by it because you feel like, well, why do you need this? Or why do you want this? Or just like, that's not even connected to me. That's his choice and what he, there are different layers of
of why.
Why, and also the connection to that. But that's what these images bring up for me, and just even, I've never seen images of, like you said, there was confidence on women's faces. It never nothing ever looked coerced or never looked like
they look afraid.
There was never that, as some other publications have shown.
Yes.
But there was something empowering about this. And, I welcome conversations because, again, this is what I came up with. So I don't see anything different.
Yeah.
I'm always interested in hearing the other side of it because people will listen to this story and think, well, they didn't think about this. I'm open to the conversation because this is what I was, like I said, was brought up in it. So it's not, it's normalized for me to see images of Black women, beautiful, beautiful black women being celebrated. It was never any other type of energy behind it.
It was
to me.
It was definitely celebration.
It was a celebration of that. So, And that's why we're doing the podcast.
That is why, to explain, and so people will come out to
people come out to the exhibit.
I think they'll enjoy it. It's always been great. I know we don't want to get into the other ones because you have other episodes. Yeah. But you're here.
You're here, Donna. Share it.
But just being a part of the last one that I was
almost 3 years ago.
Yeah,
Can you believe that?
2022.
2021.
Oh, wow.
It was since I started working.
Oh, man.
So that was October 21st of 2021. There was so much going on then. Yeah. So it'll be 3 years since the last exhibit. I can't even believe that.
So I decided to be a part of it. And the image that I chose, I felt the woman, her, she looked a little similar to what I think in my mind that my body once looked like, or, maybe looks like to me or whatever. So I think that's what I connected to with the photograph, and I just kind of enhanced the photograph. But it was fun to work with, and my wheels are spinning on what I'm going to do next time. Is. And it's very similar to what you just said, because it's a self reflection, and I want to speak to my younger self. So it'll be something similar to that. So
I'm excited.
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm excited. Like, again, everyone's showing up in ways that, of course, they're connected to their self-image, but just even the ways in which people will be displaying. There'll be installations. There'll be, Christy she's one of our sponsors with Creative Suites, and she'll be doing a one-woman performance between the opening and the closing. But at the opening exhibit, there'll be kind of like a taste of what she'll be, doing.
That's awesome.
Doing the Creative Suite.
Yeah.
At the exhibit. So there'll be an actual little room that she's going to
be in,
do her thing.
Okay.
So I'm just excited about it. And I look forward to doing more of these podcasts. And I want to we're going to wrap this up.
Yes. By all means.
And I want to thank Christy Robinson with the Creative Suite at the Plug ATL for powering these exhibits, or this podcast, and also being a sponsor of the exhibit. And again, the opening reception will be Saturday, November 19th. Oh, November 16th. Oh my goodness, that's another event.
Don't say 19th. It's the 16th.
November 16th. Yes. Take that. Turn it to the 16th.
Yes.
At Tri-Cities Tattoo Company in East Point, Georgia, from 7 to 11.
Yes. Please come.
We just hope that everyone comes out. Please follow Reclamation Art Show on Instagram and the Reclamation Project, a celebration of Black women's beauty. You can just type that in on Facebook. But the main way I would say would be to Reclamation Art Show on Instagram. And if you follow me at Warrior Mama, and that's 2 M's like Mama Mia, you'll get all the things about what is coming up. And how can people follow you, Donna? And tell them where to follow you and listen to you and all those things.
Yes. You can follow me on Instagram at Donna, SCHIELE, and the number 7. So that's Donna Schiele 7 on Instagram. And on Facebook, I'm Donna Stewart Schiele. I'm on Classics 102.9, a radio station here in Atlanta, but you can listen anywhere. I have a show called Classics at Night with Donna. It comes on
at night.
Yes, at night with Donna, from 7 to 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and then I'm on Saturdays. I have a show called Saturday Love on the radio. But you could listen anywhere. You don't have to be in Atlanta. You can tell Alexa to play Classics 102.9, or you can go on Apple Music. We're on there as well. Awesome. And you can download the mobile app.
All right.
Yes. And I'm going to be, look, I'm plugging everything.
And
also, I have a podcast myself called Hey Girl. It is a daily podcast, which will be starting back up in October. Hey. It's for girls. It's just daily motivation. That's
an acronym, right? For
healthy, educated, and youthful. Yeah. So every morning you get some positivity, something to start your day. I have weekly themes, and you do a journal on Friday. So anyway, tune in. You can subscribe to that anywhere you get your podcasts.
So thank you, Donna, for joining me.
Of course. This was my pleasure.
And stay tuned for future episodes.
Yes.
Where we'll get more into about the exhibits, people that were behind the scenes for the first exhibit back in 2018. We'll be joined by some of the new artists that'll be joining us for this year's exhibit. And we'll be just talking about why we choose and continue to choose to celebrate Black women in this way,
Yeah.
this magical way. And so we hope that you'll, listen around for more.
Yes, it's going to be great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.